Welcome back to the Barley Lads channel. Today we're going to go through the entire permanent line of the Woodford Reserve series. Some bourbons, rye, malt, and wheat. And then I also have a surprise bottle for later. Bryce doesn't know what that is, but we'll get to it. So we're going to start off with Woodford Reserve Original Bourbon. This one came out in '96. And we are going to drink these in order of release. So this is the original Woodford. Definitely a classic rye. I think this is considered a high rye, around 18% for a bourbon. Vanilla, honey. I kind of get almost like an orange zest, like a bitter orange.
Yeah, there's definitely a little orange there. And the honey is very prominent for me.
I get a lot of cinnamon on the taste. It is very peppery, but mellow.
All right, so now we're going to jump back in with the Double Oaked. So this is what Woodford's calling a barrel select bourbon. And so it was the first additional bourbon added to their permanent line, and it was added back in 2012, I believe March of 2012. So what it is it is basically the Woodford Reserve rebarreled into a new lightly toasted charred oak barrel. And it's aged for about a year from what I could find. So on the nose right away, you can tell that it's much, much richer than the original Woodford Reserve.
Yeah. It does still have a sharpness to it. More alcohol, astringency than I expect.
Yeah. So on the Woodford Reserve bourbon, I get a lot of strong honey notes. But on this one, it's much richer. It's much more like a caramelized type flavor.
Yeah. Almost like a hazelnut or apple. It's a little bit nuttier. Definitely more oak. I mean, that's very, very prominent for me.
On the taste, it's a much stronger taste. More oak for sure. A lot of like darker notes, dark fruit.
Yeah.
But very strong vanilla. So like from the caramel, from the nose, and then into the vanilla on the taste. It's just a wonderful, wonderful whiskey.
Yeah. So we're going to move on to rye. All right, so that's our third one. So this is the next release in the series. It came out in 2013, so just a year after the Double Oaked. But because of the age statement, or no, not an age statement, but I think they say it's between 6 and 7 years or something like that. So we know that they've been working on this since at least the mid-2000s. So this is going to be barely rye, and then the majority of the rest of it is corn, and then a little bit of barley. So it is light rye spice on the nose, because you're not getting that really high, 75-90% rye that you would get like with a bullet rye.
Because it has to be 51%, and this is like at 53%.
Yeah.
So it's almost tuned towards more bourbon drinkers, like to just step into a rye whiskey.
Dipping your toe in the rye.
Yeah.
Dipping your toe in the rye pool. And that's kind of how the malt and wheat are as well.
Yes.
Which we'll get to. So, but yeah, so for the rye, for me, it is a very light, like that floral rye spice, but I get a lot of black pepper on the nose.
So I don't know if it's the other two whiskeys potentially blowing out my palate, but I get a lot of the corn coming through, even though this is a rye whiskey.
Yeah.
But it is a high corn content. So there's still 33% corn in this. So it is there.
Yeah.
But one thing with the rye that I've noticed compared to the previous, well, not double oaked, but compared to the original Woodford Reserve, is that it's a little sweeter.
It does have a good finish. I got a butterscotch on the end. That kind of sits on my tongue. Like I would almost give this a medium long finish because it's sitting longer with me. Couldn't tell you why, but yeah.
Yeah, I would give it a medium finish for me. I don't get the butterscotch note, but it's subtle. I don't get it, but I get something like along those lines maybe.
Yeah.
Rye is definitely, this one was one of my favorite bottles I picked up, so I would recommend it. So I don't know, I'm sure most of our listeners are familiar with bourbons and ryes, but we want to clarify that the malt and the wheat, they're considered an American malt and American wheat, which means their mash bills are at least 51% malt for the malt and 51% malt for the wheat. Or sorry, wheat for the wheat.
Yeah. So this is not a single malt in the sense of, and there are American single malts now, but typically we're talking about Irish or Scotch for single malts, or even Japanese. Less so because there's quite a few blends out there. But for this, this is going to come in at 51% malted barley. So it is a straight malt whiskey in the same sense as bourbon is a straight bourbon without being 100% corn.
Yes. And so that's the American standard, right?
Yeah.
51%. And we want to point out too that this is also 47% corn. So there's only a small percentage of rye, so 2% rye. So
it's almost bourbon.
It's almost bourbon.
Yeah.
So on the nose, get a very sweet, mild flavor. But it's a very similar like nose to a bourbon, obviously because it's so close to it has such a high corn mash bill.
Yeah. So Bryce and I talked about this earlier, and I was really hoping that this would taste more like almost like a blended Scotch or a blended Irish, because it's typically a blend of single malt and single grain whiskey, and typically that grain whiskey is the majority corn. And so I was thinking that maybe it would taste like that, and not at all. This is much more closer to a bourbon than it does
very close to bourbon.
Yeah.
Even like milk chocolate on the nose potentially, like a very. But on the taste, I don't know. It's kind of a nutty flavor, and Zane and I were talking about this earlier. It's like a hazelnut.
Yes, I couldn't remember. Yeah, you're right.
So
that's what it is.
It's kind of like
hazelnut.
Your hazelnut coffee without the bitterness.
Without the bitter, yeah. It would be like a cold brew, hazelnut cold brew.
Yeah,
there's no bitterness there.
Put this in your drink.
There you go. Pour on your Cheerios.
Yeah.
All right, so the next one is the straight wheat. So this is the newest addition to the line. So similar to the rye and the malt, this is basically the bare minimum. This is 52% wheat, and this is a very interesting four grain mash bill. That's not very common. Depending on when this is released, this will be our first or second review with a 4 grain mash bill, but it's going to be 20% barley, 20% corn, and 8% rye. So you're definitely going to still get some barley influence, some of that corn influence, and there's still enough rye there that you're probably going to pick up some of that spice. I will say that of the 5 on the table, this is my least favorite as well. It's still a good whiskey, but and there's still a good age on it. There's you can taste a lot of hard work has gone into this.
Yeah.
But compared to the rest, it's just not as good for me.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with Zane. So for me, of the 5, it's my least favorite of this 5, but it's still a quality whiskey. That's just my opinion, but
Yeah.
I like the Woodford line. I think they make good stuff.
So on the nose, it's kind of, now again, we've tried some pretty pungent, I'll say, whiskeys at this point. But we wanted to do this in release order. But for me at this point, it kind of has a milder nose. It doesn't have any flavors that really pop, but just some subtle sweetness, some subtle spice for me, and then on the taste, it has almost like a minty finish, at least. But on the taste, it's slightly appley, but like
kind of like applesauce, maybe.
Yeah, we can go with that. So just a little different. It's very different. It's a different offering. And it gives Woodford. I think it's the only, at least major company out there, distillery out there that has all 4 straight whiskey varieties, in at least the American sense of bourbon, rye, malt, and wheat.
Yeah. So which one's your favorite of the 5?
For me, it's definitely the Double Oaked. But
Yeah.
if we're talking price point, I would probably say the rye or the malt would be my favorite.
Okay. Yeah. That's, for me, like, it's not really fair to have the Double Oaked in it.
Yeah.
Because it is a higher price point and it is much richer, and that's kind of like at least more pleasing for my palate. But of the 4, I think my favorite is the original, the bourbon. That's my go-to. It's been my go-to for a while. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna change it up on you. Bryce hasn't seen this. I talked about it early on about what we're gonna bring out here. So my friend Nick let me borrow this. This is from the Masters Collection. Yeah. So this is going to be their 2020 barrel proof. So they have their Masters Collection where they will use different mash bills. So this is not part of that series though. There's the Masters Collection which changes each year. I think they have a different mash bill in what they bottle. This is barrel proof. So this is basically Woodford at barrel proof. Now there's not a lot of information out there about whether or not it's aged longer than traditional Woodford Distiller Select or not, but this comes and is a punch above everything else on the table because it's coming it's not 90.4, we're at 61.8 or 123.6 proof. With that, now I will say that this is by far the most expensive whiskey that we've at this point we've reviewed on this channel, and certainly the most expensive on the table. You could get all 4 of the Distiller Select for roughly the same price as that. Okay. But yeah, just dig in.
I was too excited.
Did you try it?
No, I haven't tried it.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you had tried it when I was looking. So this is the same mash bill as Distiller Select. As far as I know, it's the same barrels even that they're pulling from. It's just that it is coming in at batch proof. The batch proofs that has been released, I did sample this, thanks Nick, earlier this week just to get ready for this, and it's phenomenal. Now, with the price point at $130 for a batch proof, I think that it's excessive, but is the reason behind it is because they only release it once a year.
Okay.
And it is a novelty for Woodford to release something above 90.4 proof. But if you really like Woodford, you're going to love this if you like cask strength whiskeys. So
what you're telling me is I'm going to have to go out and spend $130.
If you can find it. Now, I think the 2021 is out now or has been recently. Yeah. So what do you think?
That is phenomenal. So it's like Woodford Reserve, but then you have the heat from the batch proof.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's kind of like, sometimes when I'm in the mood for whiskey, like you want the heat.
Yeah.
And like Woodford has a great flavor for my palate.
Yeah.
So like this is like a great combination for me. So I can't believe you brought this.
Well, Nick has been slowly siphoning this off, and he promised me that he'd save me a little bit for the end, so we could do a review.
Thanks, Nick.
So it does have a lot of the same flavor profile, but it's just amped up clearly, but it doesn't burn like
No.
I mean, like 120 proof, you're talking almost every clear levels of alcohol, and it doesn't burn you out.
No.
You can sip on this. You still get the oak and vanilla that you would expect, but it has richer flavors. It almost has it definitely has that oily mouth coating quality that you would get from a lot of like the Irish whiskeys that are pot stilled. That spiciness, it coats your tongue, and
spiciness.
Very, very long finish.
Very long finish. It's still
there.
Finishing there. Yeah, it's still there.
And then it has, for me, that part that sits on your tongue is almost like an espresso, coffee.
Okay.
A hint of bitterness, but not in a bad way. Like, well, unless you don't like coffee or espresso, I guess. But it just sits there for a very long time, and yeah, it's
so good.
Awesome. What do you think?
It's like Christmas early.
I'll make sure I hide it. So, we good?
I think we're
good.
Yeah, we went through everything.
That's good stuff. All right.
I encourage you guys, go out and buy yourself a set and try them out.
Yeah.
Maybe follow us along. Give us your notes. Give us your thoughts, comments, emails, anything.
Thank you again for watching another episode of the Barley Lads. We've been going through the Woodford Reserve line of whiskeys, and then a very special barrel-proof version. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and cheers.
Cheers. This is Barley Lads After Hours.
After dark.
After dark.
So we went ahead and poured what we call the dregs of the Distiller Select line into one. We're going to call it the Woodford Infinity Pour.
Infinity Pour.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't even know.
It kind of just muted everything.
Yep.
That's why we might do a video on infinity bottles, but I'm not a big proponent because I think it just kills the whole flavor of all the different whiskeys. It kind of just makes it really bland and boring.
I would agree. This is very bland now. I was actually really excited, but now I'm not so excited anymore.
Down it.
Down it.
Cheers.